Which one of the following two stances on God's existence should be the one that we should hold as the default or null position? A. God exists, or B. God does not exist.
Default position is a position which is more probable to be true, and this is not what we call the null hypothesis. You got it wrong. Firstly, you need to understand what is a hypothesis and what is a null hypothesis. A hypothesis is a set of claims which are derived by narrowing down a null hypothesis, and a null hypothesis is something that is already known, universally agreed upon, or a fact. In fact, that's why it has the adjective null attached to it. A null hypothesis is anything but a hypothesis. Scientific method is hypothetical deductive, or in other words, all it does is narrowing down hypotheses, thus building up new data. Anyway, we may classify claims into further two categories. A claim can be an original claim or the rebuttal of an original claim. Let's make two such claims. Let's say my name is Linus Pauling and my name isn't Linus Pauling. Which one is more probable, you would say? The probability of my name being Linus Pauling is 1 divided by 6 billion if we suppose that each person in the 6 billion population of humanity has different names, while the probability of my name not being Linus Pauling is 6 billion minus 1 divided by 6 billion, isn't it? Or let's say we share common ancestry and we do not share common ancestry, or the reality is a delusion and the reality is not a delusion. Which one is more probable? I'm sure everyone would say the rebuttal is more probable because an original claim is an infinitesimally smaller subset of the overall null set. We may say mathematically that claim plus rebuttal equal to ultimate null hypothesis. So the rebuttal is always the default position as it is more probable, but it does not mean that the rebuttal is always true, as an original claim gathers reasonably conclusive evidence in its support. Despite being less probable, it becomes true. So once again, if you want to claim that God exists, you need to come up with evidence which you haven't so far. If you dodge your burden of evidence, then well, you cannot accuse the proponent of the default position for him dodging his own burden as well. Another point is party first to make a claim should be the first to provide evidence. Regardless of being true or false, the rebuttal of a claim always comes after an original claim has been made. Let's say, for instance, this claim that cells do not have any organelle called cilia sorus. Despite being true, it's utterly pointless as long as someone had not made a claim that cells have organelles called cilia sorus beforehand. The same way, the claim God doesn't exist would be utterly pointless if someone did not make a claim that he does beforehand. You narrowed down an unknown null hypothesis to derive the God hypothesis without any correlative evidence. You have not made your hypothesis even barely conclusive, and you're accusing atheists for they cannot provide evidence that God does not exist. Are you sure you're not joking? You said it is impossible to disprove the existence of God scientifically because God doesn't adhere to any natural law. May I ask you, is it possible to disprove the existence of ghosts scientifically? Ghosts also do not adhere to any natural law, but science did disprove it, didn't it? Actually, the history of science is essentially the history of the decline of dogma. When we did know nothing about microbiology, we came up with the demon theory to explain infectious diseases. By coming up with the germ theory, it is science that actually disproved demons. Science cannot prove something absolutely because of the issue of time. There always is a future, so you don't know whether an evidence against a proposition will arise in future because you cannot know the future. Not only science, nothing can prove something absolutely in the natural world. But hey, you do not need absolute proof to be sure about something, do you? How do I scientifically disprove God? Well, let's see. Some people claim God exists. This is my null hypothesis. Can we universally agree upon this? Yes, we can. Now my question is, how do they claim God exists? I'll try to gather some correlative evidence, or I'll try to find out what other observations are correlated with people claiming God exists. Well, firstly, I see they have no evidence whatsoever in support of their claim. They have no universal agreement on the definition of God. They are seldom seen trying to dodge educational discourse about their claim. They are seldom seen making baseless, dishonest claims like God exists outside reality and so on. This correlated evidence leads me to hypothesize that their claim is wrong. If their claim is not wrong, or if God exists, then what should I see? Well, then I should see some sign of him in the nature. If he is loving, we should not see zebras being eaten alive by lions and calves at all. Mother not dying living infants absolutely support less. I should not see men and dogs scavenging in the same dustbin in the third world, and so on. Do we see this? No, we do not. This is my loss of function evidence in support of my claim that your claim is wrong. But hang on, maybe God is not loving, he's just a heartless jerk. Can't he still exist? Well, so I need some gain-of-function evidence. What should we see if God doesn't exist? Well, I should see him gradually retreating. Holes in our knowledge is the habitat of God. When we didn't know why it rains, we gave the credit to a rain god. When we didn't know why sun rises, we gave the credit to a sun god, and so on. But as soon as we started to understand why it rains or why sun rises, we stopped doing so. God is running out of gap, and a God which is not of the gap is not God at all. We are seeing gradual decrement in the number of processes that could be explained by God. God is losing his godness as our gain in knowledge increases. There will be some point in time when the godness of God will be zero. He will have no gap to hide. This logical deduction of mine is my gain-of-function evidence in support of my claim that your claim is wrong. This is not absolutely conclusive, but it is reasonably conclusive, and this is the reason you will hardly find any modern scientist or academic believing in God. The belief in God fundamentally contradicts the basic rules of epistemology using which we enrich knowledge. That's how I prove no God exists. If you want me to provide evidence against the claim of Judeo-Christian God or any particular breed of God, duly appreciating your sense of humor, I will humbly refuse to do so, because I consider an invitation to disprove a claim so ridiculous as an insult to my intellect. That's why I am a 6.999 agnostic on the issue of the existence of God, and that's why I am a 7 trillion out of 7 atheist on the issue of the Judeo-Christian or any particular breed of God being the real one. Whenever someone comes up with an outrageous and ridiculous claim like God exists or the reality is a delusion, I urge all the viewers of this video to ask them why should their opinion be considered as a hypothesis, or what null hypothesis are they narrowing down and what correlative evidence do they have to do so.